All right, all right. I was on this guy's YouTube channel talking to some of his followers about the fact that you have to be one of Jesus' sheep in order to believe because that's what Jesus said, and they didn't like it. And I told him Jesus knew who his sheep were before he called. That means they were his sheep before he called them because he knows who they are. They're going to hear his voice and he's going to bring them in, and they didn't like it. And so they started complaining, and then this guy chimes in and his channel, Dr. Flowers, and he chimes in and responds to somebody else, but he wanted me to see it. That's why he did it. And so I told him I'd watch the video and then make a comment because he's a con man. I told him he's a con man right on his channel because he is. I'm gonna show you he's a con man. And yeah, his people didn't like it. And sir, you're a con man. I'm going to show you how you're conning people, and he knows what he's doing. This guy's not ignorant. He absolutely 100% knows what he's doing. Now, I'm not going to play his audio. I'm not going to play his video because I don't trust him. Con men don't like to get caught. And if he sees it or gets wind of the video, he might try to have it taken down. He's been caught a few times by other people. And he has to, with the choice meats thing, which of course he has to go backtrack and explain himself. That's what con men do when they get caught. They have to explain themselves. And so that's what he does. And I'm going to read you exactly what he said. I'm not going to make anything up. I'll put a link of this video in the description, so you can go verify I'm not making nothing up. It's only 60 seconds, but the whole thing is a con. I'm going to show you. Okay, the first thing he says is that Jesus speaking to a group of unbelieving Pharisees. Well, no, sir. Now, that might be ignorance on your part, but you should know better. He wasn't speaking to just a group of unbelieving Pharisees. First of all, Jesus had an entourage. He had his disciples following him around. They were believers. He had believers following him around. So it wasn't just unbelieving Pharisees, as you say. And then you can even see here, let me find it here. Let me find it. Yeah, it's John chapter 10. And so there's people following him. There's believers following him. And not only that, you can see after he spoke a little bit, there was division. And some people didn't believe him. They said he was a devil, and the others did. They said, oh, now he's healing people. So it wasn't just unbelieving Pharisees, and it wasn't just Pharisees. Okay, so that's lie number one. And you should know better, sir. You supposedly have a doctor's degree in theology or whatever it is that you have a doctor's degree in. There's absolutely no excuse for anything, any lie or anything just ignorant like that. And I would call that ignorance. So you're not an ignorant man. But you should know it's just not Pharisees, okay? You should just know better. And that matters for later on in John 10. Because he's going to turn to his believers and say, you don't believe, even though believe me, believe the works that I do, even though these people don't. So he's got both in the crowd. Okay, then with with the verse by his face, he misquotes it. Literally with the verse by his face, he misquotes it. The verse says, you do not believe. You do not believe. It's the Greek word uk. It means not. It's an adverb. You not believe. Do not believe. Why? Because you're not my sheep. But what comes out of his mouth, see, what comes out of the mouth shows what's in your heart, Jesus said. Now, what came out of his mouth? What came out of his mouth is this. You refuse to believe because you're not my sheep. It's in front of it's right by his face, but what comes out of his mouth is not what's in the text, but you refuse to believe because you're not my sheep. Now, you think that was an accident that he used the word refuse? No. This man is not stupid. You look in Webster's dictionary under refuse, it means someone unwilling to accept. You think that's an accident by this moron? No. That's calculated. He misquotes it on purpose using free will buzzwords. Unwilling, the will to accept. No, that wasn't an accident. What comes out of your mouth is in your heart. And what's in your heart is free will, because it came out of your mouth. The next he says, some people interpret that God did not love or desire the salvation of those people. Now, think about it. Just think about it, doctor, with this brain here. God is walking around on earth, and he knows everybody that's going to be saved and believe in him. He knows everybody. He knows his sheep. He knows them by name. He knows them before he talks to them. Who it is. He knows his sheep. It says so repeatedly in John chapter 10. So he's going to walk up to some unbeliever whom he knows. He knows the guy's going to hell when he's standing in front of his face. And he's going to wish and hope that guy would believe in him? Really? I mean, wouldn't that make Jesus just the kind of guy you accuse the Calvinists of making him? Wouldn't it? Of course it would. He doesn't desire them to go. He already knows they're not going to. Why would he desire them to when he already knows they're not? He's God. He doesn't walk up to the unbelievers and desire they go. Well, if that's love, then sir, he doesn't love them. If love is desiring that they go and he knows they're not, or he loves them even though he knows they're not going to heaven, they're going to hell. I don't care which way you slice it. He knows they're not. And he says, you don't believe because you're not my sheep. They have to be his sheep in order to believe. Is that a circular argument? So what? It's true. It's not based on anything false. It's based on what Jesus said. Circular, that's another thing you little cronies do. They learn from you. Well, it's a circular argument. Oh, it's circular. Well, that doesn't mean it's untrue, sir. It's a nice, perfect circle. A nice, perfect, true circle. So what? It's true. It's true. They don't believe because they're not his sheep. It's not that they're not his sheep because they don't believe. No, it's the opposite of that. They don't. Jesus said it. You do not believe because you're not my sheep. You have to be his sheep in order to believe. They did not refuse. They were not unwilling to accept. They weren't his sheep. They weren't going to. Yes, you can say they cannot because they're not his sheep. Of course you can. It logically follows. Aren't you the logic guy? Aren't you supposed to be the logic guy? Always beating up on the Calvinists for their logical fallacies. Well, he knows who's going to go to heaven and who's not while he's standing there. Why would he expect them to believe? Why would you say they're unwilling to accept when they just can't? They're not his sheep. Duh. And then he went on to say that sheep doesn't mean unconditionally elected. Well, who said it did? If someone said that, so what? If they're his sheep, they will believe. God said right there, right in this chapter. The Bible says, same thing. I give unto them eternal life, and they shall never perish. But that's a saved person. Neither shall any man pluck them out of my hand. Well, that looks like what the Calvinists call assurance of salvation right there. My Father which gave them to me. Gave them to me. Gave. Has given. Now, in Greek, that's a perfect indicative verb. Go look up what a perfect indicative verb is. That means it's a done deal. It's a done deal. That's what that means. It's absolutely 100% done deal. So you don't want to call that elect? So what? Call it a done deal. Because God decided it. You call it whatever you want. But they're his sheep. They were his sheep before they called. It says so. And God gave them. They didn't decide on their own to be given. God gave them. It's a completed deal. Can't be undone. They do not believe because they're not his sheep. And then he says the word sheep means follower. Well, no, it doesn't. It means sheep. The sheep do follow. They do follow. Not they decide to follow. They do follow. He calls, they hear because they're his sheep, and they follow. They are followers, but the word sheep doesn't mean follower. You know better than that. All right, then he goes on to say, again, he uses the free will word refuse, meaning they were unwilling to accept, when that's not even in the Bible at all, ever. He says they refused to believe because they did not learn and listen from the Father. Well, that's, again, that's not what the Bible says. Here it is. I think this is the verse he's referring to. Nothing about, not refuse. Not refuse. And they shall be taught of God. Not they shall accept what God taught them. Therefore, hath learned, and have heard, and have learned. That's an aorist participle. Some would say that's past tense, but aorist is not necessarily past tense. It means that well, they did. It means it means the ones that did. It's not that complicated, right? So every man that does and did, but this one is a shall. It will be. That's a future tense. They will be taught of God. Not they refuse. They are not willing to accept. No, they will be. And every man that is or has will come to him. Again, it's a done deal. It's a guarantee. It's not an if or a maybe or a willingness. And then he goes on to say it's a theme where God relates everything he says and does to the Father. Well, yeah, that's right. That's right. What they say goes. They're one. It's not. And again, you see the language that I'm showing you, sir. Everything happens. It's not refuse. It's not a willingness or not. It happens. They become willing. Not they decide to be willing. They do. But it's not like their free will. As I said, Jesus knows all that are going to. Nothing changes differently than he already knew was going to happen. I mean, free will just goes out the window. It's going to happen that way anyway. All those that are going to believe are going to. His sheep will come, and they will hear. It's not a matter of them deciding to because they thought about it and said, gee, that's a good idea. Well, if that happened, it's going to. It's not going to. It's a guarantee. Like it's written down already. It's a done deal. All the language says that. And then he goes on to say, people like Cornelius, well, yeah, people like Cornelius. And yeah, they will recognize. Would? You see, there again, it's like, well, they would. No, they will. It says they will. And it's not just Cornelius. That's what your cronies were doing. Because I'm going to show you in a second, Jesus knew everyone from of course he knows everyone from all time who's going to believe. But he said, I have sheep that are not in my fold. That's talking about Gentiles. That's everybody up until now. And your little crony, because you watch your little video, yeah, it's like Cornelius, people that were only people that were alive during the time. This is where he's getting it from you. He's getting it out of your mouth, which has free will in your heart because it comes out of your mouth. And he's saying, well, it's people that were alive that might have heard about him. Now, it's funny that I'm not going to go into that. But it's not just Cornelius. It's you or me. I don't think it's you. Sorry. But anyone that is already, before they hear Jesus, already his sheep, because he says that. He says, I have sheep that are not in my fold. He has them. Not they're going to become them. They already are. Before he ever calls. And they're going to come. So, it's not just like, it's Cornelius, that's right, but it's not just like Cornelius that were alive. That's what your cronies tried to tell me. But they're wrong. You need to go correct them if those are your cronies. And I'm going to show you that right now. Here's the first place. All that ever came before me. That means before he came. Are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not hear them. The sheep. That's a definite article sheep. That means his sheep. They were his sheep before he came. And they didn't listen to the robbers and the thieves. The robbers and the thieves, that's you, sir. And the sheep aren't going to listen to you. And here's the other one. Here's the one that your cronies just stumbled all over. And other sheep I have. That's a present tense verb right there in Greek. It is in English too. I have now other sheep, which are not in this fold. He has them now. That's obviously referencing the Gentiles after his resurrection, and more Jews too. I must bring. They shall hear my voice, and there will be one fold. They shall. They will. They will hear his voice. That's a future tense indicative. They will. They're his now. Before they hear his voice, they're his now. All the sheep that are going to hear his voice. From the time he said it up until right now, current time, all of them. It's a done deal, man. It's a done deal. All the sheep are decided, right? He knew them. They're decided as of this point at least. Now, you don't like the fact that people call that election, or which is the Greek word actually selection. But I don't care what you call it. It's a done deal. I call it a done deal. He already knows who they are. He has them now, and he's going to bring them in. You call it whatever you want. You call it whatever you want. But for sure, it's not that they're going to refuse, meaning they're just unwilling, the ones that are unwilling. No, They're not his sheep. That's why they don't believe. They don't believe because they're not his sheep, and that's why. It's not that they're unwilling. Yes, you would say they can't. Yes, you would say they're not able because they're not his sheep. If they were his sheep, they would believe. If they were his sheep, they will believe. If they are his sheep, they will believe. Because he said, you do not believe because you're not my sheep. And here the words are in front of your face, and what came out of your mouth was in your heart. It was free will. That's what's in your heart. Your wife's a psychologist. I don't know if she practices, but I happen to know a lot about that profession. If your wife's a practicing psychologist and they're sitting in that chair, what she's doing is building the self of them. That's her job. The self. To build the self. The thing Jesus said you have to deny. And that's what all the therapists do. They build the self. They build self-esteem. The thing Jesus said you had to deny. And that's what you're married to. You can't believe the truth, or you'd be at odds with your wife. And I think that's why what's coming out of your mouth is in your heart.